Hello and welcome to Buildings of Tomorrow. My name is John Lester, and in today's episode we are talking about fire safety applications in critical environments. What are some of the trends that we see in the industry today, and what are some of the challenges that those trends are bringing up for us in this industry? I'm joined today by Jonathan Copley. He is a marketing manager for fire safety systems at Siemens Smart Infrastructure. Jonathan, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, John.
It's an absolute pleasure. It's actually not the first time we've talked, but it's always nice to have a returning face and to see you again.
Yeah, a little bit of deja vu there.
A bit of deja vu in our current home office lives is a bit of this is a reality for us now, I think. Thank you for joining us. Today we're talking about fire safety in critical infrastructures. Before we dive into the fire safety specifics, what do we mean when we say critical infrastructure?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. There's no really fixed answer to that. It's often thought to be infrastructure that relates to public health, public safety, the broader economy. Here in Siemens, when we're thinking about fire safety and we say critical infrastructure, we're really thinking about buildings or installations where you really do not want to interrupt the operation because of the consequences that will have.
Okay, so we're talking hospitals, we're talking, critical pieces of our energy infrastructure, anything that sort of supports our daily lives, health, and the effectiveness of daily operation.
Exactly. Data centers is another good one.
Yeah.
Airports, it's a real nuisance if you have to disturb operations and so on. But there are many of these examples.
Okay, I understand. Now, thank you for that, because my next question is, what's the difference? What is the difference between one of these critical infrastructures, hospitals, data centers, airports, etc., and a normal building or a building that we wouldn't consider critical, like an office building or a shopping mall or something like this? What are the differences?
Yeah, well, let's take the example of our offices, our Siemens offices here in Switzerland, John.
Okay, yeah.
Just imagine you're sitting at your desk, you're working on your PowerPoint or your spreadsheet, and then there's a fire alarm. Okay, so you then have to leave the building in an orderly fashion, stand outside. This is a real pain in the neck, isn't it? It's a real nuisance. But the consequences in the end are not so great. You're annoyed, you maybe miss half an hour of your day, but it's not a disaster. But if it's, for example, a hospital, if you've got people in intensive care wards, other people in operating theatre, and the fire alarms go off, you've got a big problem if it's a real fire, and you've got to try and deal with that.
Understand. So it's that. There's not so much the building itself in this example. It's the impact of if you're not able to use this building or go about the business that this building hosts. As you say, halfway through a surgery, you get an alarm for a fire. You have to change what you do, and then if it ends up to be a false alarm, as an example, then this could have an impact on someone's life, which is this is the ultimate criticality when it comes down to it.
Indeed, and it's not just the short-term impact. Of course, if it's a data center and the whole thing goes down for an hour, that's really bad. But if there's a fire and the whole installation is out for a year or more, then the consequences are much, much greater.
Right. So that's perfect for me, because, as you say, it was a really a good clarification. It's not just if there's a false alarm, it's if there is a fire or if there is an event, you have to ensure that it's handled effectively, because you can't then close the doors for a month, close the doors for 6 months, because this is an integral part of the operation of the society and the community it lives within.
Exactly so.
Perfect. So let's talk about what's changing, because in today's episode, we want to talk a little bit about not just the fire safety in these buildings, but also some of the things that are changing around them and within them that are rising the demand for different applications, different things to consider. What are some of the things or the major trends that we see changing in this space?
One of the big trends is the move towards green energy, the energy transformation. And this is also having a big impact on the need for what we term critical infrastructure, as we've been discussing. One of these is the need for huge amounts of battery energy storage. We all know the problems with green energy. Sometimes the wind is blowing and the sun is shining, other times it's not. So you need to capture this energy to store it for the occasions when you need it. And protecting this sort of infrastructure, energy storage, is one of the big growing applications that we have.
And this is a big one, definitely, because we, as you mentioned, we do see a huge shift in the energy industry and the way that energy is generated, where and how it's stored, how and where it's used as well. This is an evolution, a revolution in the industry from an energy transformation perspective. This is a huge conversation, so this will take a little bit of time. But give me one more. What's another example of an industry trend that's bringing some changes into this critical infrastructure space?
As a bonus, I'll give you two, John. Two quick
Two
ones.
more. Beautiful.
First one. There's, again, as part of the move to green energy, the uninterrupted power supply that you need in a hospital or a data center. In the past, we used a dirty diesel. In the future, again, we want to use battery energy storage. So this is another example. But there are other trends, other types of trends, and one of them is the move to more and more containerized installations. And by that we mean when you take, for example, a collection of electrical equipment, transformers, switching stations, and so on, and put it in a box, a container. These are the containers that you see on ships. These big metal containers, they look rather like that. And this is a real trend, the move to these containerized solutions, because they're much easier and more cost effective. You can assemble them in factory and then ship them, and you just have to then commission on site.
Okay, so that complexity that's changing within the energy space is also starting to get us, or move us towards finding better ways to do this really focused and skilled work, building energy transformers as you described, or installing them and getting them ready, putting them into a container somewhere in a factory where the weather is always nice, and you can control the space, and then taking that and sending it wherever, down the streets, to the next city, to the next country, to the next continent.
Yeah, this is a special challenge, actually, and why Siemens is one of the few companies that are really able to execute this sort of business efficiently, because, as you were starting to mention, you might typically have the manufacturer of the container in one country, let's say Italy. We have a customer in Italy. Then the ultimate location for the container might be a solar power installation in Australia. And the general contractor for the whole project and the integration might be in Canada. So you've got this real global business, and you really need to have a partner like Siemens on site in all of these global locations. At some point, the container is shipped, in this case to Australia, then the final commissioning has to be done there on site, and then the service has to be done there. So you need to have the Siemens presence in Australia, also in Canada to talk to the partner there, and in the country where the container is manufactured. So this real global presence is really important for this type of business.
Okay, and thanks, because you then covered a bit of what my next question would be, which is, these new trends, what are they raising? What are the challenges they're bringing to us? And this global one is a huge one. How do we make sure that what is installed in country A is going to be up to the expectations, fulfill the requirements from a regulatory perspective in country B once it's shipped there, and make sure it's commissioned and working as it should be. When we talk a little bit about about these electrical components, when we talk a little bit about battery storage and these kinds of things, do they come with a technology challenge as well? Because I can't imagine that if there's a fire in this situation, you walk in with a bucket of water and throw it on to these electrical components. So is there a challenge also from a technology perspective?
Well, the big thing about a battery fire is you can't really extinguish it in the traditional way.
Okay.
All you can do, or at best, is to contain the fire. So I'll give you an example. If the fire is in one of the containers that we've been talking about, it's then in an enclosed space, and you can detect the fire very early, and then just release a big blanket of nitrogen gas. And that it will not stop the battery getting hot or even getting hotter, but what it will do is prevent an explosion. You can contain the fire and then just allow the battery to burn itself out and eventually cool down. So you've avoided a catastrophe. And this is one of the challenges that we have. And in fact, in Siemens, we have a specialist laboratory at Alpenrhein. And here we test the batteries from all of the major global manufacturers and develop very special solutions for this type of critical infrastructure protection.
Yeah, okay. I think I understand it a little bit now, because I could imagine that's a very different approach than you would be able to take in the basement of a building, or in a space where people may be working or could visit, as an example. So it's not just that trend that's pushing in a direction for these solutions, but it's a whole new approach on how you can manage those incidents if they happen, because of the uniqueness of the deployment to a certain extent.
Yeah, and it is a big new field. I mean, we get questions almost every day from engineering consultants all around the world asking questions like, well, how do we deal with electric vehicle charging installations in future? What are the risks? How do we manage them? So there really are new applications coming up, which we are able to address, but we have to do some development in some cases.
Yeah, for sure, because in the end, like you described before, if we think about hospitals, we think about data centers, but then we think about this energy transition, this is having an impact in any kind of building, in any kind of industry across the globe. So it's sort of a new consideration we have to bring in, but it's something that will be everywhere. E-mobility charging, you mentioned. We have countries that are committing to only allowing, and companies saying they'll only sell electric cars after 2030 or after 2040 or whatever it might be. All of a sudden, we're going to have electric charging in the basement of every building. And electric charging in every car park, and we need to have a way to address this effectively across this huge scope.
Yeah, I don't want just to talk about batteries, but as we're on the subject, you can imagine with all these electric vehicles, with all this battery energy storage, there's an explosion of need for batteries, and this means massive battery manufacturing facilities that are springing up all over the world. And incidentally, these present also a challenge in that the batteries in principle can actually catch fire during the production process. So this is another example of a critical infrastructure application.
I understand. Perfect. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today. It was great to have a conversation.
Yeah, it was my pleasure.
And I'm sure we'll see you again. Like, we've only scratched the surface on a couple of these topics, so I look forward to that. A big thank you also to everyone listening out there. Please remember to share, like, comment on this episode, subscribe to us wherever you're listening or watching this episode. Look out for the new ones every week, and we hope to hear or see you very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, John.